Sometimes it's best not to eat the food in a restaurant, but to send it back right to the kitchen. I once didn't do that, and I ate the food anyway, even though I had my doubts about it. And sure enough, I got some food poisoning, and I was really sick for 1 full week. So hi, hello, and welcome again. Microbehunter here. I'm Oliver, and today I want to continue the video series about food safety. And today's story happened, maybe around 25 years ago. It happened to me, and it is an example of where I learned it the hard way, so to say. And yeah, so what actually happened? Well, back at that time, together with my family, I visited a really expensive restaurant, and I ordered some pumpkin soup as a starter. Now, pumpkin soup is a pretty common dish, especially during the pumpkin season in fall, and there's really nothing special about it. I make it all the time at home. Now, how can a restaurant now justify the high price that they charge? Well, yeah, nothing special about the pumpkin soup, so you have to do something with the presentation of the food. So you have to make it special in some other way. And this is what the restaurant did. The restaurant had a brilliant idea of serving the soup now in a small pumpkin. Well, not in a ceramic bowl, no, not at all. Rather in a small, real, hollowed out pumpkin. And the pumpkin was cut open at the top, and the contents were carved out, and then the pumpkin was filled with the soup, and then the top part was put back on again as a lid. And this is basically how the waiter carried it to the table, and this is how it was served. Looked pretty nice, was very original, but this was actually a problem. Now, when I saw it the first time, then I thought this was a pretty original idea, but quite soon I already had my doubts, because how are they going to clean the whole thing, right? You can't use hot water to rinse it out because that would basically cook the pumpkin and make it soft. And I remember that at that time I was worried a little bit more about other people having eaten from the same pumpkin bowl, and that they couldn't properly clean it. But actually the issue, as it turned out, was actually much more severe than that. I could see that the pumpkin wasn't quite fresh. The edge where the lid had been cut off was already a little bit dried and discolored. So it was very evident that this pumpkin bowl had been in use for a time, some time now, maybe several days. And obviously the restaurant kept on reusing the same bowl over and over again. The soup also was not boiling hot. Of course, this makes sense because that would actually have cooked the pumpkin as well. But it was an expensive restaurant, so what could go wrong? So I basically simply ate the soup. Well, and already about 1 hour later, after having eaten the soup, I had already started to feel sick, right? And sure enough, the result was diarrhea for 1 full week. I was ill, and it was food poisoning, of course. And the fact that the first symptoms already started to appear so quickly, that's actually a sign that the bacterial toxins had already formed, and that the pumpkin was already growing bacteria, and that those toxins leached into the soup. Now, the pumpkin bowl was maybe a week old or more, I don't know, and of course it was spoiled, right? And bacteria were already growing on it. So I did not just eat the bacteria, but also the poisons, the toxins that they made, and that's why I got sick quite quickly. Well, in short, I ate soup that had been in contact with a spoiled pumpkin, and this wasn't even very hot, and therefore it was already a bad idea. Well, I should have sent it back immediately and asked for fresh serving, and not just ask for reheating the soup, because that does not always deactivate the toxins that might already be there. I should have demanded a fresh soup, hot, served in a proper ceramic bowl. And so yes, I learned from my lesson this way. I had to learn it the hard way. Basically, don't trust restaurants just because they're expensive. Now, the question, of course, is how can this even happen, right? Aren't there laws about food hygiene? Well, of course there are, both in Europe and in the United States and in many other countries around the world. There's strict rules and guidelines concerning kitchen cleanliness. And but the laws alone are, of course, not enough, as we've seen, because you also need some kind of internal procedures, a workflow, and of course also an awareness, so that those guidelines are put into place. And if a restaurant says something like, yes, of course, we clean the pumpkin bowls after every use because we rinse them, well, then that's not enough, right? You need proper cleaning with hot water. You need a detergent. And with a pumpkin, of course, that's not possible, obviously. And for this reason, exactly these clever serving ideas, they become a problem. And shouldn't the restaurant have known better? How can this even happen? Well, I don't know what happened in the background behind the scenes, of course, but I assume that either the cook maybe, or maybe the owner of the restaurant, they had this idea and there simply was not enough awareness of the risks. And yeah, let's just use a pumpkin and serve it some soup in it, and nobody else does that, and then the food is special, yeah, the presentation is nice, and then we can justify the higher prices. Maybe this was kind of the reasoning that was going on, but that's not a good idea. And this also hints towards a more general problem. Well, if they're not even aware of say food preparation standards, then what other sloppiness could you expect in the kitchen? Do they mix raw and cooked meat? Do they reuse things that they should not be reusing? Do they keep track of the expiry dates and the age of the food? Is there a constant refrigeration of the food? And is the temperature of the fridge also set correctly? I mean, there are many things that have to be taken into consideration here. And if they're already being that sloppy about food hygiene concerning the pumpkin, basically serving soup in a pumpkin that's obviously already visually spoiled, well, then that kind of hints towards larger problems. And I do remember another incident, and this time in a different restaurant where they served us rice that tasted sour. Well, we sent it back, and later the waiter apologized, and he was unexpectedly honest about the whole thing. He admitted that the kitchen accidentally took the rice from the pot that was meant to be thrown away. They simply mixed up the fresh and the old rice. I mean, seriously? Seriously, spoiled rice can be extremely dangerous, and that's a complete lack of procedure and standards, and that's also a good reason why restaurants are inspected, and rightly so. But even we consumers have to take a responsibility. Why did they even eat that soup, right? I mean, it was obvious that the pumpkin was already old and spoiled, and it still basically says, yeah, I'm in a fine restaurant, it's embarrassing, I'm not going to complain now, I'm just going to eat it. No, this is not the way that it should go. So what's my point? Some people worry excessively about almost everything. They're almost paranoid and about catching illnesses in situations where there's basically no risk. Some people are really afraid, and sometimes I have to say, come on, no, that's not how it works. You're not going to get ill of that, right? But then there are cases where it's justified to be careful, and proper food hygiene is one of those categories. Or as I always like to say, well, if you already want to worry about something, if you already want to worry about your health and health issues, well, then at least worry about the aspects where it's actually justified. Worry about those things that actually matter. And from my side, that's all I would like to share with you today. Yes, there is a huge empty comment section, or maybe sooner or later it's not going to be empty anymore. There is a comment section below. Yeah, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Happy microbe hunting as always. Hope to see you again in the next video. Bye bye.